There's only one thing I probably hate more than losing 3 matches in a row. It's losing 3 matches in a row and then there being an international break to follow. Absolutely hate them. But you could argue this one has come along at quite a nice time for Eddie Howe to get the players on the training ground and reassess a couple of things. And I'm going to be talking on this video about a couple of things from a tactical and a team selection point of view that I think Eddie Howe could maybe be looking at. He's the pro. I'm just a fan who has a couple of ideas, but if you're curious about them, do us a favour, Newcastle fans, make sure you stick around. We're all going to Milan on 30. That's right, Newcastle fans. Before I get into the video, Milan ticket is sorted, flights are sorted. Haven't sorted my hotel yet, but I'll probably sleep in a pile of spaghetti if I have to. The Champions League is, as I make this video, I will be on the aeroplane in 8 days. Oh my God, doesn't that sound wonderful? Supporting Newcastle United with a pizza slice in my hand, a pint of Moretti in the other, in the San fucking Siro. Bring it on. Lots of videos to come on that. So how could I not be in a good mood despite how Newcastle's form has been going lately? Welcome back to Black White Banter though. Sorry, I just had that song in my head as I started this video. It's been in my head, well, since it was created back in May. If you are new around here, Newcastle fans, and you like what you are listening to, probably won't like the face, but you might like the opinions. Do us a favour at the end, whack that little subscribe, but regardless of whether you like this video or not, give us a little likey loo. It's bad enough it's the international break. Just be nice and whack that like button. It doesn't take you very much, but it means a lot to me. A couple more people might see this video. So, as I said at the start, I am not a fan of international breaks in the slightest. If you want to call me an England bandwagon jumper with the Euros and the World Cup, feel free, because that is exactly what I am. But with the way things have gone for Newcastle, more so the concerning performance we saw at Brighton on Saturday, which was really, really difficult one to take. It probably isn't badly. It's not badly timed at all. It's well timed. I mean, look at Sven Botman's injury and how much we missed him. Let's hope this international break just allows him to get fully back to fitness for Brentford next Saturday, which is an absolutely huge match. Huge. And then, of course, that little Champions League game in the packed out San Siro with the Champions League music playing. We need everyone firing all cylinders. And wouldn't it be nice to get a result against Brentford before that trip to Italy, which is going to be so new, so exciting, but so new for all of our squad, pretty much apart from a couple, apart from your Bruno, your Tonali, but Trippier, there's not many though. There's not many who've experienced what we are about to embark on. So, this video is mainly about some of my opinions, and I'm going to go on record, as I will always do. Eddie Howe is the man with the plan. Eddie Howe is a fantastic manager. I'm just looking at this from a fan's perspective of what I think we could maybe look at, and some of these might not be feasible, these ideas, but just something I've been giving a lot of thought to and what maybe needs to be reassessed. So, first up has to be the Longstaff factor. And I talked about it on my match vlog from Brighton. I talked about it in my last word video just a bit further down. It's getting to the point now where there are big question marks of whether Bruno and Tonali can play together. Tonali's wanting to get forward. That's meaning Bruno's having to sit. We know Bruno's not the sort of player who wants to spend a whole match sitting in the number 6. Yes, he's a pivot, but he's a pivot who likes to carry the ball a little bit further up the field and move the ball in areas up there, near the 18-yard box. Tonali's doing a lot of running, he's supporting the attack, he's getting to the byline like we saw against Brighton, and it's meaning one of them has to sit in. Longstaff freed up the other one and did a lot of that dirty work last season. And I think Eddie Howe has to be looking at bringing him back in. Now, the reason I say that is not just because I think them two can't play together, more from the point of view of how we set up to play. Last season, a lot of the foundations we were built on were on Bruno coming and seeking the ball when we had the ball at the back, as we like to play out. As questionable as Nick Pope might be at doing it sometimes, we basically turn into a bank of 2 and a bank of 4. The bank of 4 obviously being with our fullbacks pushing a little bit further up, our 2 centre-backs sitting in, and then Bruno and Longstaff would make the other part of that 4. Bruno would come and seek the ball, he would carry it forward, he'd maybe play it into someone in the forward line, or he would normally switch it to the wide areas. The reason Longstaff was so important in that 4 when we played the ball out is because he wasn't interested in having the football at his feet. He was there to make sure nothing went wrong. If Bruno loses it as we carrying the ball out, Longstaff's job was to mop that up. We don't currently have that. We really, really don't. Not only do we not have that freedom for the other player to bomb forward, because Longstaff is better in his defensive duties than what Bruno is, but when we are carrying that ball out, we do not have any discipline in there, in my opinion, to just have a player sitting, making sure nothing goes wrong. And more teams are going to start figuring out how to play us, and they are going to start creating mistakes in there. We've already seen a Newcastle team riddled by mistakes this season. I'm not saying Longstaff is the answer to correcting errors, but he is there as backup and security when we like to play the ball out. And that's one of the biggest foundations of where our success was. I'm not saying Bruno and Tonali will not learn to work together a little bit better. I'm just struggling to see where 2 players who want to get further up the field can happily work together successfully to create that solid foundation that Eddie Howe's teams become so successful on. And I think Longstaff coming in from the first phase of play from our back 4 all the way through the lines is very, very, very important. We wanted a number 6 in the summer. I believe Eddie Howe wanted one. I don't believe there was one on the market that was good enough at the right price with financial fair play and squad build, and not just one player, to make that purchase. I think Eddie Howe knew Tonali wasn't a number 6, but what he saw was a good price for a good player who's a good age, but also so versatile, and we know how he likes it. So I don't think we recruited where we wanted to there, and that's why I think Longstaff could have a very important role coming back into the team. Joe Willock and Joe Linton, that's another factor I want to talk about with regards to players. Before I will talk about formations and where we can change things. What doesn't get talked about for me enough from last season was the success we saw in Joe Willock and Joe Linton working on that left-hand side. Now, I know Joe Willock's injured and he's got another injury now, so we cannot be talking about him in the conversation until further down the line. But Joe Linton was very, very successful on that left-hand side. And the Joe Linton we've seen so far this season, barring the Aston Villa game, has been adopted a little bit more defensively and a little bit more reserved. And what I love about Joe Linton is his box-to-box factors. And we haven't seen as much of that this season. And I don't know whether that's because Anthony Gordon is such an attack-minded player that he's so far up the field. Whether they haven't built that relationship yet, I don't know. But all I know is that when Joe Willock and Joe Linton worked together, Dan Burn did not have to get forward. Dan Burn could sit in and do what we know Dan Burn could do solidly enough, and that was defend. So we had enough there at the back without being exposed. Them two causing defenders headaches constantly on that left-hand side was a huge factor in why we were successful last year. We are not currently adopting a ball-carrying player apart from Anthony Gordon. Last season we had Joe Linton as a ball-carrying player, and we had them both carrying the ball down that left-hand side, and for whatever reason, whether it is to accommodate Anthony Gordon a little bit more, we adopted a different system where Joe Linton's not being used in the same way. And I think that is, again, something that needs to be looked at. Because if Joe Linton's sitting in more to cover for Bruno, who's not the best defensively, so Tonali can get forward, that's something else that needs to be assessed and looked at. Because Tonali, yes, he seems to be very good. We've seen him in flashes so far. He is not going to be the answers to our attacking problems. And we do have attacking problems. And that leads me on to my next point of whether Eddie Howe is just playing things a little bit too safe at times. And the main player I'm going to give as an example of that is Miguel Almiron. Miguel Almiron is a very predictable footballer. He's never going to pull trees up in a Newcastle shirt. He's going to put in a shift. And I still, to this day, think that Eddie Howe deep down knows that Almiron is not the best in quality in the attacking third. That was a purple patch we saw at the start of last season, and I'll stand by that. I think Eddie Howe loves Miguel Almiron for his work rate, and he is a workhorse. 6.23 defensive moments per 90 last season. That is incredibly high for what you call a winger. And I just wonder whether Eddie Howe needs to take more risks. If the reason Almiron, I'm sure he does have faith in an attacking point of view to some degree, but if the larger reason that Almiron is in this team is for his defensive capabilities, let's mix that up a little bit. Let's bring Barnes in, who maybe isn't as good defensively, but we should have enough cover in our midfield if we adopt things right to make up for that. And I even go back to Jacob Murphy. It's getting forgotten about how well Jacob Murphy finished last season. We can all look at him as a larger picture of his Newcastle career as being a bit of a donkey and a bit of a mediocre footballer. But he finished the season incredibly strong. And at one point for me, I wanted him in every week. Going back to that Spurs game when he smashed in 2, he's running. He did have a very, very big input in that successful end to the season that got us over the line with Champions League, and that can't be forgotten. But I think that Eddie Howe needs to take a couple more risks. He really, really does. Sorry, I've just got my notes in front of me, so if I'm looking at my screen. Now that leads me on to my next point of formation. And I know at the start of this video I said I would talk about maybe team selections, but also how we can change the team. Now, what I'm worried about with this Newcastle team going into last season is I still do not think that Eddie Howe has a plan B. And that's one of my only concerns. I've got full faith in the manager. I think we're going to turn around this poor spell we're in. I think we've got so much engine in our team, attacking quality when we do turn it on and things go right, to overrun and overpower and just put teams in that chokehold that we saw against Aston Villa on the opening day. But as a team that plays with the press that we do in 2 banks of 3, in generally a 4-3-3 system, what we've struggled with so far, in my opinion, is teams who play us the same way. Teams who try and overrun when we've got the ball in defence, they get up our arses. That causes mistakes. That's where Longstaff not being in the team gets exposed a little bit, because we have those little gaps in between midfield and defence. And I think Eddie Howe, in matches where every man has been put behind the ball from opposition teams, which, by the way, we haven't seen that yet because we've had such a difficult start against good opposition. We will see Sheffield United come to St James's Park and do that. We'll see Burnley do it. We'll see Bournemouth do it. It's going to keep happening against us the way we like to play. We struggled with it last year. We haven't added central attacking players that I would have liked. I think Eddie Howe needs to look at switching up a system. What system do I think we could bring in? 3 at the back. So if you remember in pre-season, Eddie Howe tried 3 at the back in a couple of the games in America. And he came out after and he said pre-season gives us a perfect opportunity to try things because we need to mix it up in different competitions because we're in so many this season. We haven't seen it since. And I wonder whether Eddie Howe was waiting for the right left back to be able to play 3 centre-backs. So what I think is a system that could work would be Fabian Schär, Botman in the middle, and Dan Burn as a centre-back 3. I know Dan Burn hasn't been playing well lately, but just hear me out on this. Kieran Trippier do what he always does as a wing-back. Lewis Hall as the other wing-back, who, by the way, is very comfortable in midfield as well, so him getting further forward should not be an issue at all. So we adopt 2 wing-backs. We play 2 midfielders in the centre, whether that's Bruno and Longstaff, whether that's Bruno and Tonali, whatever. But that allows Joe Linton to maybe move a little bit more central. And the reason I believe that this sort of formation works well is we can overrun teams that only have 2 central midfielders and allow Joe Linton to maybe take up that more attacking role a little bit more centrally. But you can bring players like Harvey Barnes in and we can really, really overrun that midfield a little bit further up the pitch. Imagine down the left-hand side, Gordon and Hall. Down the right-hand side, let's just say Almiron and Trippier. You've got your 2 midfielders sitting. Maybe, one sits with them centre-backs. One of them can get a little bit further forward. Longstaff can sit in. You are then looking at Bruno being a bit further forward, Gordon, Hall, Trippier, Almiron, Isak. We have a lot of players there to overrun things when teams put a lot of men behind the ball. And I do like 3 at the back. It's worked so well for coaches over the years. Guardiola, he does it with Kyle Walker, obviously. When he's done it in the past, it's worked well for Conte. It's worked well for England. And I know that's a controversial one with Southgate. you know, we've got to semi-finals, we've got to finals. It's something that Eddie Howe needs to look at, and that's not even touching on how we could adopt Hall as a midfielder and allow Bruno to get forward, like Arsenal did so well last season with Zinchenko, which was almost a new formation for the Premier League. Hall moves up, sits in as a defensive midfielder. Bruno pushes on one. He's then a lot further up the pitch, and we have an extra central midfielder able to join the attack. There are different formations that I'm sure Eddie Howe is using and already has looked at, like we saw in pre-season, that I think need to be looked at, because teams are going to continue knowing how we play now. We are not the new kid on the block anymore. We aren't. We play the same system, generally speaking, of intensity, of a press, from the striker to the wingers. I'm just a little bit worried the teams are figuring us out a little bit, and that's going to continue happening. And I'm also worried we don't sometimes have the ammunition to break down teams that sit men behind the ball and park the bus. So Newcastle fans, let me know what you think Eddie Howe might be looking at during this 2-week international break before that huge game against Brentford, and then Milan, and then Sheffield United, and then Burnley, because these are big fixtures after the poor start we've had. I think Eddie Howe needs to be looking at teams switching it up selection-wise. I also think he needs to be looking at tactical changes. Maybe you don't agree with some of the points I've made. I know my tactical points were maybe a little bit bleh, because it's very difficult to explain what I think see that looking like on a video. So apologies for that. But please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I am not going to be going to any of the Saudi Arabia games in St James's Park. The less I say about some of the content that's being churned out from Newcastle YouTubers, the better. So you won't see any match vlogs from that. It just doesn't interest me at all. I'll keep my views to myself on that, because that's a different video for a different day. But I am going to continue making videos in the build-up to Brentford about all the things we've kind of learned and things to give us food for thought in this 2-week little break. Newcastle fans, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know if you're going to Milan. I want to have beers and speak and just have an absolute jolly boys with as many people as possible. And I'll see you on the next video. How are you, the lads?